Hey guys, hey guys, how is it going? In a previous video, we have talked about on how we can implement multiple reducers inside one store right here. So in this video, we are going to walk through on how we can implement middlewares inside our Redux store. So middlewares is basically a function that intercept every single actions that we created using dispatch method. So here in our store.js, we can start to create our middleware, and we can do that by importing our apply middleware, and here we pass the second parameter, which is our apply middleware, and here we specify what middleware we want to use in our store. So maybe we want to create a new middleware which called logger, and this logger is actually just a middleware that log every single actions that we just created. So here we can create our new function which called logger, and here's how you can create your own middleware. So your state, and then you got your next function, and here you got your action. So here you can just console.log your action, and now as you can see that we just console log all of our actions that we just triggered with the dispatch method. So here we create our to-do with the payload of this one and blah blah blah. But here we don't actually call our reducers, and that's because we don't call this next method that we just get. So here as you can see that we don't actually get our console log from the subscribe method, right? This one. We don't see this state has changed because our state is actually don't change at all because we don't call this next action. So here we can say next and our action. So if we reload, and here we can see that we console log it and we also change our state. So that's cool. And the cool thing about middleware is because we can actually change what's inside this action. So maybe we can just change this action into the type is equal to increment like this. So here as you can see that our state is now just being incremented because here we always change our type into increment. So we can go back to our previous one. So yeah, cool. So we actually can change our payload, our ID, and maybe our action type and so on. So that's the cool thing about logger. So it's basically a function that will intercept every single action that you just created. So the cool thing about middleware is actually you can install third-party middleware and install it into your Redux store. So here you can open up your terminal and you can say npm install Redux logger. So this is actually a middleware that just log every single action that we just created. So here we can just remove our classic logger function, and after the installation is finished, now we can import from Redux logger, and here we get our logger like this. So here we apply our middleware, our logger middleware that we just imported from Redux logger. So if we save it and we run it, and you can see that we got a cool console log right here. So we can actually track what is the previous state and what action do we trigger and what's the next state that just been created after this action coming. So that is a very cool feature from Redux logger. And there's another handy middleware for Redux that I want to show you. So here you can open up your terminal and you can say npm install Redux Thunk. And basically Redux Thunk is a middleware that will help you to run asynchronous code. So our installation is finished. Now we can go back to our store.js, and here we can just pretty much comment this out because we don't need this anymore right here. And yeah, so the first thing we want to do is we want to import Thunk from Redux Thunk like this. And here we also want to install our Thunk middleware to our apply middleware. And then we can start to use this Redux Thunk. So here we can say store.dispatch. And now what we want to dispatch is we want to dispatch a function instead of an object. So here we can get a function, and this function takes the dispatch argument. So this dispatch argument, so we can use this dispatch parameter to dispatch another action. So this is very useful when you are writing asynchronous code. So let me show you how it's done. So here we are trying to fetch a data from this server. We trying to fetch a data from JSON placeholder, and here we get a promise, so we need to send then, and we parse this to JSON, so we can say res.json, and here we also get then again, and right now we can call this dispatch method. So here after we done, we can say dispatch, and the type is should be fetch success, like this. And here we also can pass the catch. So if our server is error, so here we can pass a dispatch again, but this time we want to, the type is fetch error, like this, error. And lastly, before we do anything, we just want to dispatch, type is fetch loading. So this is very great for fetching a data from a server, because here before we do anything we want to show a loading, and here when we finish the request we just dispatch a success, and if there's an error we just dispatch this error. Cool. So we can handle this data by maybe comment this out and create a new reducer, which called maybe reducer again, and we can just pretty much comment this out, and yeah, so here we can say function reducer, and we also get the state and the action, and here our state should be an object that have a loading, and by default is false. And here we also get the data, and it should be null, and the error, it should be null. So here we can actually return our state, and here we are trying to create a switch case. So switch action.type, and here we get case fetch success, like this. Want to return the loading is equal to false, and the data should be the action.payload, like this. And we actually need to pass the payload from here, so you can say payload and our data, which is right here. So here we also want to send the error message, so right here, and we also pass the payload, which is our error. Cool. So now in our reducer, this code is a little bit messy, but don't worry about it. So here we also can create a new case, so case fetch error, want to return loading is equal to false, and the error, it should be our action.payload right here. And lastly, the loading, so fetch loading, we want to return the data, loading equal to true. So we also want to use this default case, so here we can say default. Yeah, so this should be working. So now if we go to our browser, and here as you can see that our state has changed 3 times. So first we are calling this action right here, and this action is basically just a function which don't trigger it yet. And here we are trying to fetch the loading. So our loading, the next state, the loading is true. And here in the state has changed, we have the loading is false, but the data is now this one right here that we just successfully fetched from the server. So now if maybe we want to make this request error, so maybe we can just say this, so it should be error. Now if we go to our browser and we can see now we fetch loading, and here we also fetch error. So here in the next state the loading is still false, but now we get the error and we get the message. So cool. So that's it for the middleware of Redux. See you guys in the next video.